Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, has joined MasterChef Australia as a guest judge. The lifestyle influencer, actress, wife to Prince Harry.
Meghan Markle spent the last few years trying to build a second act out of jam jars, calligraphy bookmarks, and a Netflix cooking show wrapped in soft California light. For a while, it looked like it was working. But 2026 has turned into one of the messiest years of her post-royal life, and the headlines keep piling up faster than her team can spin them. A major streaming partner has quietly stepped away from her business. A former palace insider has gone on international television to double down on old bullying claims. A guest appearance meant to charm a new audience turned into a controversy of its own. And a long-awaited family reunion with King Charles happened without the one royal relationship that actually needed repairing. None of these stories exist in isolation. Together, they tell the story a year that has been far rockier than Meghan Markle's carefully managed image would suggest, as ever was supposed to be the thing that finally worked. Launched in April 2025 as a curated lineup of jam, honey, wine, and flower sprinkles, the lifestyle brand grew directly out of Meghan's Netflix series, with Love, Meghan, which premiered around the same time. The pairing made sense on paper. A cozy cooking show feeding viewers straight into a cozy online shop, both built around the same soft, sun-drenched aesthetic that has become Meghan's signature since she and Prince Harry stepped back from royal duties in 2020. For its first year, the formula mostly held. Products sold out quickly, collaborations generated buzz, and Meghan leaned into her identity as a founder rather than a former actress or working royal. She told people in early 2025 that she saw herself as an entrepreneur and a female founder, and that framing became the backbone of how as ever was marketed to the public. Then, in March 2026, Netflix stepped down as an investor in as ever. The streamer had backed the brand financially since its earliest days, and the two companies had built out a joint consumer product relationship around it. When the partnership ended, both sides issued measured, appreciative statements about the road they'd traveled together. But the timing mattered. It came roughly a year after As Ever launched, and not long after reports that Netflix had already scaled back its broader overall deal with Meghan and Harry's production company, Archwell, from the original $100 million agreement signed back in 2020 down to a lighter first-look arrangement. Losing an equity partner the size of Netflix, even with warm language on both sides, is the kind of thing that tends to make industry watchers ask harder questions about where a brand is actually headed. Those questions haven't gone away. Marketing and branding experts have been notably blunt in the trade press this year, warning that As Ever risks losing momentum unless Meghan sharpens what the brand is actually supposed to represent. One industry voice put it plainly: without a clearer sense of purpose, a lifestyle label has limited staying power no matter how photogenic its packaging is. Public relations experts have echoed similar concerns, suggesting that Meghan needs to decide whether the project is about commerce, culture, or personal reinvention, because trying to be all three at once has left the brand feeling reactive rather than intentional. Meghan hasn't slowed the release schedule in response to any of this. In January 2026, As Ever kicked off the year with a handmade leather bookmark, stamped with the phrase "fell asleep here" in her own handwriting, bundled into a moment to unwind, set alongside peppermint tea and honey. The bookmark reportedly sold out within minutes of going live. In March, the brand launched its first outside collaboration, a flower-focused bloom box made with boutique California florist. Reports have also floated the idea of international expansion, including trademark filings in Australia, though a spokesperson for Meghan and Harry pushed back on the idea that any formal expansion decision had been made, characterizing the international trademarks as standard business practice rather than a signal of an imminent global rollout. The pattern that emerges from all of this is a brand that keeps moving forward at a fast clip while simultaneously fielding skepticism from the very industry it's trying to win over. Meghan is not walking away from As Ever. If anything, she appears to be doubling down on it as her primary vehicle for staying relevant in the public eye. But 2026 has made it clear that doubling down and succeeding are not the same thing, and the brand's most important corporate backer deciding to walk away is not a detail any founder can spin as good news. If there's one storyline that has followed Meghan more persistently than any other, it's the bullying allegations that first surfaced years ago and simply will not fade. The origin of the story goes back to 2018, when Jason Knopf, who was serving as communications secretary for Meghan and Harry at the time, raised formal concerns with Palace Human Resources. Knopf alleged that Meghan's treatment of two personal assistants had pushed him out of the household. Those concerns stayed private for years, until they leaked to the press in 2021, just before Meghan and Harry's widely watched tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey. That alone would have been enough to keep the story alive. But in 2026, Knopf added new fuel to it. Speaking to 60 Minutes Australia for a documentary about the royal family, Knopf confirmed that he stands by everything he said back in 2018. Asked directly whether he regretted going public, he responded simply that he wouldn't change anything. When pressed on what it's been like to live under the spotlight since the allegations became public, he offered a fairly candid answer, essentially saying that someone in his line of work has to be able to take the same scrutiny he once dished out to others. That a notable thing for a former insider to say on camera, years after the fact, with no professional obligation to revisit any of it. Royal commentators have pointed out that Knopf remains close to Prince William, having continued to work with him on projects like the Earthshot Prize, which has led some experts to suggest his willingness to sit for the interview wouldn't have happened without at least tacit awareness from William's camp. Whether or not that reading is accurate, the optics of former aide reaffirming serious workplace allegations on international television, years into Meghan's new life in California, are not the kind of headline any brand relaunch wants competing for attention. And just as that story seemed to settle back in the background, an entirely different version of it popped up in an unexpected place, an Australian cooking competition. Meghan filmed a guest judge appearance on MasterChef Australia back in April during a trip to the country with Harry, sitting alongside longtime judges, including Po Ling Yao. The segment, built around a dish fit for a Duchess challenge featuring local ingredients like macadamia nuts and native honey, finally aired in late July. Before it even reached air, Australian outlets were already reporting friction behind the scenes. Some coverage suggested that contestants gravitated toward Po Ling Yao for feedback and reassurance rather than Meghan, and that tension built when Yao referred to Meghan as royalty in a promotional clip, despite reportedly being asked ahead of time not to use that word. Several outlets used the word bullying in their coverage of the alleged tension, prompting a wave of criticism online, even as a representative close to production pushed back and told people that everyone involved had a positive experience on set. Separately, a body language expert who reviewed the aired footage suggested that Meghan appeared to be balancing two different public personas throughout the episode, part relaxed home cook, part still performing royal figure, describing the effect as something close to cosplay rather than natural ease. That's one interpretation among several, and it's worth being clear that body language analysis of this kind is inherently speculative rather than conclusive. But the fact that a cooking show appearance built around honey and celeriac somehow generated its own bullying headline says something about how quickly that particular word attaches itself to any new Meghan project in 2026. None of this happened in a vacuum. Either Meghan has spent years positioning herself publicly as an advocate against cruelty and bullying in various forms, which means every fresh allegation lands with a bit more weight than it might for someone without that history. Critics are quick to draw that contrast. Supporters argue the claims are recycled tabloid material that follows her regardless of what she actually does. Both things can be true at once. The allegations remain disputed, and they also keep resurfacing at consistently inconvenient moments. Perhaps the hardest story to spin with clever branding is the state of Meghan's actual family relationships back in Britain, and 2026 has been a genuinely mixed year on that front. The biggest development came in July, when Meghan, Harry, and their two children, Archie and Lilibet, traveled to UK and met privately with King Charles and Queen Camilla at Highgrove House, the King's private country residence in Gloucestershire. It was a meaningful moment on paper. This marked the first time the entire family had been together since the Platinum Jubilee celebrations back in 2022, and the first time King Charles had seen his grandchildren in person in more than 4 years. The visit reportedly came together on short notice, after earlier uncertainty about whether the children would make the trip at all, due to unresolved questions around security arrangements in the UK. Harry had been in the country earlier that week for events tied to the countdown to the 2027 Invictus Games, and sources described the eventual Highgrove gathering as warm, with the king said to be particularly moved by the chance to reconnect with Archie and Lilibet after so long apart. That's the encouraging part of the story. The more complicated part is who wasn't there. Prince William and Kate Middleton were notably absent from the Highgrove reunion. William reportedly spent that same afternoon at a polo match at Guard's Polo Club with Kate by his side, and the estranged brothers did not cross paths during the visit at all. Royal commentators have suggested that William remains far more cautious about renewed contact with Harry than his father does, with some reporting describing the Prince of Wales as still guarded about trusting his brother, even as King Charles appears to be taking a longer view and pursuing a gradual thaw in his own relationship with his son. That dynamic has played out elsewhere this year, too. Reports earlier in 2026 pointed to a private meeting between Harry and King Charles at Clarence House, described as a meaningful, if brief, step toward rebuilding contact between father and son. There's also been talk of a possible future reunion on U.S. soil, tied to Charles's travel plans, that could include another chance for the king to spend time with his grandchildren. William, meanwhile, has reportedly kept his own summer travel plans, including an expected trip to the U.S. for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, deliberately separate from any prospect of seeing Harry or Meghan while he's there. So while the Highgrove reunion was a genuine milestone, framing it as full reconciliation would be an overstatement. What actually happened looks more like a family relationship healing along one branch while staying essentially frozen along another. King Charles appears willing to keep extending contact toward his son and grandchildren despite his own ongoing health treatment. William, by most credible accounts, is not there yet, and there's no strong indication he's in a hurry to get there. For a family that has spent years asking the public for privacy and patience, that unevenness keeps giving royal watchers fresh material to dissect every time a new detail emerges, whether who attended a gathering, who didn't, or what the seating arrangement might have implied. Underneath all of this is the unresolved question of security, which has shaped nearly every UK visit Harry and Meghan have made since stepping back from royal duties. Harry has spoken publicly and repeatedly about how difficult it has been to secure adequate protection for his family in Britain since losing his automatic entitlement to state security, and that unresolved issue reportedly nearly derailed the July trip entirely before last-minute arrangements were made. Until that gets settled in some lasting way, every future visit is likely to carry the same undercurrent of last-minute uncertainty that surrounded this one. Put all of it together, and the picture of Meghan Markle's 2026, so far, is a lot messier than the soft-focused branding suggests. Her most important corporate backer for as ever has walked away, even as she keeps expanding the product line at a steady pace. A former palace insider has used a major television platform to reaffirm serious allegations from years ago. An unrelated cooking show appearance somehow generated a fresh version of the same controversy. Her family's relationship with the monarchy shows real signs of progress in one direction, through her father-in-law and his growing bond with his grandchildren, while remaining essentially unchanged in the direction that arguably matters most, her relationship with the future king. None of that means Meghan's public life is collapsing. She remains one of the most talked-about public figures in the world. Her products continue selling out within minutes of launch, and her Netflix series has picked up industry recognition this year, including a Daytime Emmy nomination. But visibility and controversy have become nearly impossible to separate in her current chapter. Every product drop invites scrutiny. Every reunion gets measured against who was in the room. Every new project seems to reopen an old wound rather than close one. Whether that changes in the back half of 2026 will likely come down to a handful of things outside Meghan's direct control. Whether As Ever can find a new anchor partner to replace what Netflix walked away from, whether the bullying allegations finally lose their grip on the news cycle or find a way to keep resurfacing, and whether Prince William's guarded stance toward his brother softens even slightly in the coming months. For now, none of those questions has a clear answer, and that uncertainty is exactly why Meghan Markle keeps making headlines this year for reasons that have very little to do with jam, candles, or carefully staged California mornings.